This is Healthy Souls with Father Nicholas Lowe, helping you to live a Christ-filled life in today's world. Father Nicholas is the pastor of St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, Florida.
Well, last week we began a new sermon series that is a sermon series that I've never preached on in my 10 years as a priest. It's a sermon series that I hope you understand that it builds upon itself week after week. So this week's sermon builds upon what we talked about last Sunday, and as we go forward, those sermons will build upon each other. So it's really important, to be honest with you, that you go back and just to kind of get the full effect of these sermons, that you kind of go back and listen to those previous week's sermons. But today I want to talk to you specifically, I think probably the most important message that we'll share in this sermon series, about how we need to live like it is the end times. Sometimes I think if we were to kind of put ourselves in the mindset of God, if you will, and kind of pulled back the screen, and just for a moment we could see what God sees, I think it'd be something like this. That when he looks at planet Earth, he sees a lot of good things going on. He sees some things that people are making the differences in some ways. But he also sees a lot of agony, a lot of tragedy. He sees how 20,000 children die every day from starvation. He sees how women and children every day are being sold into slavery. He sees the stress and the agony of people that are dealing with a loved one who's dying of cancer or living in an abused relationship. He watches as children are dying. He sees marriages that are breaking apart. He sees the threat of nuclear war, terrorist attacks happening. And then he starts to see these hurricanes impacting all over the world and people then resorting to using gun violence as a way to resolve their conflicts. I think if we just pulled back the screen for a moment and saw what God sees, it would be natural for us to ask the question, God, are these the last days? Are you coming back soon? Are we living in the end times? And what I want you to know, and you should hear me, church family, on this, is God never wanted you to be sheltered about when he's coming back again. God never wanted you to be living in the darkness about when he's going to come back again. In fact, he tells us time and time in the Bible, I'm coming back. 300 times, over 300 times in the New Testament alone, Jesus tells you, I told you this all last week, I'm coming again. Of the 260 chapters in the New Testament alone, 216 of them say, I'm coming again. He tells us out of the 27 books in the New Testament, 23 of them say, everyone, don't get distracted with here, be focused on there, because I'm coming back again. Better yet, in our divine liturgy, just a few moments ago, we said, I believe, O Lord, that you will come again to judge the living and the dead. In a few moments from now, when we're all kneeling, open up your liturgy book, and it's going to say a prayer that the priest says over you. It says, let us not take communion as a way of being condemning to us, that when we take communion, that we can stand before you, listen to this, when you come again, and not in judgment or in condemnation. God has a lot to say to us, friends, that he's coming back again. And what we've got to understand is we don't know when he's coming back again. If you're asking Father Nick, Father, when is Jesus coming back again? Let me tell you something. I don't know. But I do know that we are living in our last days. There is going to be a generation that will be the last generation on planet Earth. There is going to be someone on this earth at some point whose eyes will see the coming of the Lord. And I think some of the reasons why God never tells us when he's coming back again is because I think that many of us would wait till 2 weeks in advance and then to start to prepare because he's coming back again. And what I want you to understand, friends, is God doesn't want you to get ready for him to come. He wants you to live ready because he is coming. You know, several years ago when I was a student at the seminary, at the last summer before you graduate, they take us to an area that we've shared with you many times in the past called Mount Athos. It's a peninsula in northern Greece. And just so you know, this peninsula, this amazing area, is known as the Garden of the Virgin Mary. Because one time when she was going from Ephesus on her way to Jerusalem, by the way, she would be shipwrecked and land on this peninsula. In this area, in this peninsula with these monasteries, has some of the most holy and sacred things in all of Christianity. Bob Simon, the great news reporter, the late great news reporter for 60 Minutes, in doing an interview and visiting on Mount Athos, remarked that it was one of the most extraordinary places he had ever seen in his entire life. And Bob Simon was not a Christian man. But on this peninsula, when I was there once, they had this angel on the very top of a dome. And in the hand of the angel was a hammer. And this angel would have this hammer in its hand, and every few minutes, it would just mechanically ring all day and all night. It was a constant ringing. And at first, I thought it was kind of cute, you know, just to hear this little angel with a hammer kind of hitting this bell. Minute after minute, it would just kind of go off. But when you're at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're just trying to get some sleep, it isn't that exciting. But I remember asking the monk, I said, why do we have that angel with that hammer on the top of that dome? This is what he said. He said it's to constantly remind us every 30 minutes that you now have 30 minutes less on this earth. It's to remind us that time is ticking and God needs us to live ready. Can I give you some encouragement? I know this message is a little bit heavy and sometimes you could be scared. I don't want you to be scared, but I do want you to be prepared. I wouldn't be a good priest if I wasn't trying to prepare you for what is going to happen. And I want you to understand this important principle, that how you live on this earth will determine where you live in eternity. That God is not looking for you to live a life that's simply blending into the earth. God needs all of us to stand out of this earth. He doesn't need us to simply blend in, stand out. Not getting ready, let's live ready. I want you to open up your Bibles to page 289. We're covering today an amazing book that Paul writes to a man named Timothy. If you've never read the books of Timothy, there are two letters, 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy. Just so you know, Paul is writing a letter to Timothy, who is a priest. Timothy is one of the underlings of St. Paul. And if we understand the Bible and what its true essence is, the Bible basically, God uses the pen of St. Paul to write a letter to all of us. So he's writing a letter to Timothy, and he's saying, Timothy, don't you dare forget to preach a sermon about the end times, how we need to live in those end times. So I want you just to listen, and this is one of the 300 verses in the New Testament alone that's talking about Jesus is coming again. We're going to pick it up right where at chapter 3, verse 1, page 289 at the very end. Listen to what it says. And I just want you to say, as you're reading this with me, this is almost a checklist for you. As you're reading this, make it a personal reading for you, so that when you read it, it kind of makes sense. And you could say, check or don't check if it doesn't apply to you. All right? Here it goes. Remember that there will be difficult times in the last days. I think we could all say that there's a check that we'd put next to that. We're living in some difficult times right now. People will be selfish. Check. Greedy. Check. Boastful and conceited. Check. They will be insulting. Check. Disobedient to their parents. Check. ungrateful, check. And irreligious, check. They will be unkind. Can y'all say this with me? Check. If you think so. If you don't say anything. Merciless, check. Yeah. Slanderers, they kind of say bad things about people. None of us do that, but other people do. But let's just say check, okay? They're violent, check. And fierce. They will be treacherous, check. Reckless. How about this one? Swollen with pride, check. They will love pleasure rather than God. They will hold, listen to this is not to us, to other people, but let's just listen for a moment. They will hold to the outward form of our religion, but reject its real power. Can y'all say it with me? Check. Keep away from those kind of people. Timothy is getting a letter from the hand of Paul, who is being inspired by our Savior, that I'm coming again, and be careful, because we did a lot of checking. So let's make this a little bit productive. Let's not sit in that sadness that we have. Let's just make this a productive sermon. So let's share with you 3 checks that you need to make sure on a day-to-day basis. The first check that you need to do every morning is check that you're making the most out of every opportunity you have. Every day, listen to me, church family, God does this on purpose. He puts people in your life, friends in your life, cashiers at grocery stores, people on the soccer field. God is putting people in your life that He's yearning for you to help them out, to be a word of encouragement, to inspire them. Sometimes those people could be your children. He puts those people in your life. And sometimes I kind of think of us as Christians, sometimes we have this lifeboat approach to being a Christian. We kind of are on this lifeboat, and the world is the water around us, and the world is all sunk. And we're just kind of traveling through, just trying to get to the kingdom of heaven. Our job is not to be at the end times on the lifeboat, listen to me, by ourselves. God yearns for us to put people on that lifeboat as we journey in life. Listen to how St. Paul, being inspired again by God, says this in relationship to the end times. He says, be careful, and take advantage of every opportunity you have, because the days, listen to me, church family, are filled with evil. In other words, those days come and those days leave. And ask yourself, how many people this past week did I take advantage of? Did I encourage? Did I lift up? Did I bring Christ to? Those are opportunities that God needs for you to pull up on your lifeboat. You got to check to make sure you're taking advantage of those opportunities. Number 2, I think probably the most important of the 3, is check that you're sharing Christ's love. There was a recent study that was talking about the millennials, and if you know any kind of research on the millennials, oftentimes they get a bad rap about their behavior or their desires, their work ethic. But millennials represent one of the largest segments of our population who do not go to church. In a study recently, it found that 87% of all millennials, why they don't go to church is because of hypocrisy. They go to church. They don't go to church because every time they go to church, they feel people are trying to fix them and not love them. Jesus says, this is a new commandment for you. I'm coming again, and I need you to know this commandment, for you to love everyone like I have loved you. Let me digress a little bit. I'm going to do a little preaching if you don't mind. Can we just love everyone? Can we stop looking if you're a Democrat, Republican, if you are for offense or against offense? Can we just have this idea that I'm going to say, I'm going to love everyone. I'm not going to look at if you're across the ocean, if you are different values than I have or different belief systems that I have. Jesus didn't put qualifiers when he loved you. Don't put qualifiers on who you're going to love. We are called to love all people. And sometimes I have to be honest with you, I go on social media and my heart breaks because the message that we hear on a Sunday morning about loving all people doesn't match what people are seeing on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Hey everyone, newsflash, just love everyone. He's coming again. Number 3, I'm back now, so back right now. Third one, check to make sure that you're sharing the gospel of Christ. God doesn't need any more inner Christians. He doesn't need any more private Christians. He's not asking for us to simply blend in. He's saying, would you just stand out? I love what he says, one of the last messages that he tells us, when he's telling us about coming at the end times, he says this message, he says, all authority on heaven and on earth is mine. And you would think that if he's making that statement, that the following statement would be, so I'm going to go and tell the whole world about who I am. I'm going to go tell the world about what I have to offer. I'm going to tell the world about how I'm going to resurrect from the dead. But he never says that. He says, all authority on heaven and on earth has been given to me. Now do what? Go. You go. I go. And can I tell you, church family, some of us are waiting for the priest to kind of go out. Can I let you know something? You've all, by your baptism, been ordained to a little priest. You all have a responsibility. And every day, you're given a sermon. Just like I'm giving a sermon now, you're giving a sermon to your neighbor, to your classmates, to your friends. Listen, if you're not using your mouth to give that sermon, listen to me, you for sure are using your life to give that sermon. God needs us to give a sermon in this world. He needs us to not be afraid to say, government isn't always the answer, but Jesus Christ is. That when someone is complaining about a struggle that they're facing, hey, I'm going to walk with you. Because Jesus says, lo, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I will not fear, because you are with me. When someone tells you, I'm really worried, I got all these anxieties that I'm thinking about, remind them that Jesus tells us time and time again, don't you dare be afraid, I'm coming again. God yearns for us to not be afraid to share the gospel of Christ. We got to check it. I leave you with this. In 1970, there were 1.2 billion Christians. In 2018, there are 2.6 billion Christians. We went from 1.2 in the 1970s to 2.6 in 2018. There are more people becoming Christians now than in the previous 1970 years. You know, this one statistic is quite interesting. There are 190 some odd nations in this world. All but 20 of them has Christianity growing. Do you know what one of those 20 that's not growing is? Here. And I kind of think of it like this. You know, when we go to church, some of us come to church and we just like to get the food. We like to get the message, and that's great. But we leave here and we don't take the light anywhere. We just kind of take it. We're kind of plugged into God, but we don't take it anywhere. And then there's some of us that we come to church and we get a little bit of some food. We're kind of excited about a little bit for a couple of hours, and we kind of turn on just a little bit. And we're giving a little bit of light out to the world, and we're trying to inspire people, but that lasts for about a day. We're doing great on a Sunday, but on Wednesday we're struggling, we're yelling, we're doing things that we know we shouldn't be doing as Christians. But God doesn't want you to stay here. In fact, God never intended you to be just a little light. He desires for us to share His light. You see, this world that we live in, just like this church right now, it's dark. It may not be dark in your world, but there are a lot of people in this world who are living in darkness. And what God is saying is, hey everyone, hey church family, look over here. I'm coming again. And I need you to seize every opportunity that I'm giving you. The window will open and the window will shut. Don't just focus on your lifeboat. To make sure that you're showing love to everyone. Don't put qualifiers on who you love and appreciate. And then number 3, that you're going out and you're making sure I'm going to share my faith. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to learn about it. God, use me so that I could be a light in this dark world. Because how you live your life, friends, on planet Earth will determine where you live your life in the heavenly kingdom. Like God is just not looking for you to blend in. He needs you to stand out. This sermon series is not about you getting ready. It's about you starting today, living ready.
We invite you to join Father Nick and his wife, Dr. Roxanne Lowe, on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month for their Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls call-in show at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on Ancient Faith Talk.